Hey my fellow friend sets, it's Chris from Shughead Gaming bringing you my review for Budget Cuts, developed and produced by Neat Corporation. Previously released for PC headsets back in 2018, it finally makes its debut on the PSVR this July 25th, 2020. At the time of this review, no price has been listed, but based on the PC price, I would expect this to retail for around $25 US. Of course, that depends on your region. Budget Cuts places you as an employee at mega conglomerate Transcorp. Your role as a paper-shuffling filer has been put under threat by the arrival of cost-cutting robots. Once a VR darling when it launched on PC headsets, does this stealth adventure still hold up in 2020? Stay with me as we tear it down and find out. As always guys, if you like this video, please hit that like button. It not only helps out my channel, but VR gaming as a whole. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, please consider subscribing, and for video updates, hit that bell icon. Well, it's that time again, let's talk graphics. Jumping into Budget Cuts, I was immediately reminded of earlier VR titles such as Vertigo on the PC and Job Simulator. Although coming 2 years after these genre-setting titles, here developer Neat Corporation has chosen to keep this clean and minimalist visual style. And while it certainly feels a bit dated and underwhelming, it works for the overall style of the game. The low poly, low shader approach looks sharp in the headset, but to be honest, I'm surprised it isn't a bit sharper considering the simpler visual style, illustrated perfectly by the game's need to include a magnifying glass to help read some of the simple text documents. That being said, stopping to really look at the visuals reveals certain aspects of the world actually having some slightly more advanced texture work than you might perceive watching the game in action on a flat screen or quickly teleporting around in the headset. This is also true on the lighting side of things, as the simple bright aesthetic of the game gives a first impression of being very simple, yet a further analysis reveals a graphic style that casually plays with lighting to offer rooms a bit more depth and atmosphere, with the ability to turn off the lights being a stark example. Character designs are pretty standard fare here, but are modeled and animated competently enough that they fit the look and feel of the game just fine. In addition, the game throws in some decent ragdoll physics, adding a little more nuance to the rather simple combat. The game's simplistic visual style aside, which in some ways comes down to the taste of the gamer, my main issue here would be the lack of level variety in enemy and level design, as much of the 4-hour campaign will see you sneaking past the same few enemy types and treading through very samey looking offices and hallways with only a bit of color and verticality thrown in to mix it up. True, the game never overstays its welcome, but a quick look at an early VR must-play, Vertigo, will demonstrate perfectly the variety that can be offered up with a similar approach to visuals. Some will certainly appreciate the simple Portal-esque approach to the visuals here, and while the game certainly does look clean and polished, I also felt like I had seen everything the game had visually to offer in the first hour or so. Sound is up next.
Can you keep it down? Some of us are trying to look busy! Where was I? Oh yes, locating the Wilderman. Are you sleeping? Do you require a caffeinated beverage? No!
Want to know what Budget Cut sounds like in as few words as possible? Job Simulator with an attitude and a jazz synth soundtrack. Honestly, I could leave it at that, but for those who want more detail, here it is. Budget Cuts, like a few other VR titles you may have played, revels in the fact that it has robots making sarcastic comments on how ridiculous our accepted societal norms can be. Whether it is the commentary coming from the PA or sarcastic worker bots simply commenting on their daily grind, most of the voice work is done well and is more often than not worth a chuckle. Unfortunately though, these lines do get repetitive pretty quick and really start to grind when you are dying repeatedly in one area. Sounds in and around the environment are pretty standard fare. They do the job, but rarely surprise. However, the music does not follow this paint-by-numbers approach and actually offers up a cool jazz synth-type soundtrack that is quirky and fun, and fits the atmosphere of the game quite nicely. Finally, the overall sound mix here is polished and competent, offering up some nice directional 3D audio, which helps greatly in a stealth game of this nature. All in all, a solid effort, if just a bit predictable. And that brings us to gameplay. Going into Budget Cuts a bit blind, I was expecting a fun and light run-and-gun action game similar in tone and gameplay to the previously mentioned Vertigo. And while the fun and light tone is certainly in full effect, surprisingly Budget Cuts is a stealth game through and through, with zero gunplay and a heavy emphasis on avoiding detection and conflict. Throughout the roughly 4-hour campaign, you will be hand-fed objective after objective in a linear fashion via your pager and the resulting phone call you must make. Objectives are simple in nature and have you doing tasks such as find a thing and get to a new area, often being nothing more than a carrot on a stick to keep you moving forward throughout the light story, which sees your character attempting to escape the newly appointed robot overlords. Story missions being nothing more than window dressing, Budget Cuts is a game, for better or for worse, built around its stealth gameplay. Unfortunately, Budget Cuts often feels like a victim of its time, basing its movement scheme solely around teleportation and click turning, with no option to alter this in any way. Admittedly, the strategy of the game is based around its teleportation mechanic, requiring you to often bounce and roll your teleportation ball into place, allowing you to first partake in a little bit of recon before committing to the teleport. Now, don't get me wrong, Budget Cuts is still a bit of fun, as you strategize on how to navigate or attack the uncompromising security bots. They will spot you quick and make chase, often shooting at you faster than you can teleport away. This also goes for your teleport ball when in recon view. As such, every move must be planned carefully. Combat on your side of things revolves entirely around throwing knives, or a pair of scissors in a pinch. Primarily, you will find yourself tossing a knife up in the air, flipping it around to stab attack, or simply throwing it for a ranged attack. Enemies have multiple hit points, but headshots are the guaranteed takedown to go for. However, throwing physics being very realistic with a weight and speed system that feels great also makes for a very challenging style of combat, often resulting early on with a missed shot simply giving you away. As such, the game encourages you to go in as close as you can for the kill or avoiding combat altogether. I loved this risk-reward system and found the knife throwing to be some of the best I've ever played in VR. However, the rigid control scheme of teleportation and click turning, while admirable in its attempt to be strategic, often just felt clunky and antiquated, never giving me the nuance or speed I wanted, resulting in frustration as I constantly fought the controls. Needlessly, dying often became the norm, an aspect that really highlighted the game's slow loading screens between deaths and added considerably to my frustration levels. Speaking of controls, Budget Cuts is played with 2 move controllers and tracked well. It can be played easily either standing or sitting, with standing being recommended for easier dodging of bullets or crouching behind cover. Given the limited control as the core method of movement, motion sickness should not be an issue for most users. Finally, the core game at about 4 hours is a bit on the short side. Fortunately though, the PSVR version also includes the arcade DLC, adding an additional 4 levels along with a 5th exclusively to the PSVR, in which you can hone your skills and score chase. And finally, that brings us to Fun Factor and my final review. Like Vertigo before it, I simply cannot fathom why Budget Cuts wasn't released back in 2018 for the PSVR. The simplistic visuals paired with the overly safe control scheme would have likely felt less antiquated and out of place. Unfortunately, the PSVR scene now has games like The Walking Dead, Saints and Sinners, and Aspire 1 that often make Budget Cuts feel like a VR gem from a completely different generation of VR. It remains a polished and fun title with some nice stealth mechanics, but as a current PSVR title, I fear it will likely just not impress. As you guys know, I hate numbered review scores, and as such review games on a basis of buy it, burn it, or wait on it. Given that I'm betting on a $25 US price point, I think this game is worth waiting on a sale for, unless you need a game for yourself or others that is a safe and simple entry point into VR. It's most definitely not a bad game, and for those who love stealth gameplay, there is certainly some fun to be had here. With so many big PSVR titles coming out over the coming weeks, I simply just feel that this is likely better left on your wish list instead of on your bank statement right now. Anyways guys, that's it for me. If you like this video, please hit that like button. And if you'd like to see more VR content from me, you know the deal, please consider subscribing. And for video updates, make sure you hit that bell icon. Thanks for stopping by guys, and I'll catch you on my next video.